course, reports are coming about people going to downtown Inqilab Square and University of Tehran, and that means the initiation of mourning as we are expecting funeral and other ceremonies down the road. Also, the country simultaneously is experiencing a continuous campaign of strikes. A few hours ago, we heard sounds of explosion here in the capital and in other cities. But speaking of the legacy, I think the key, or one of the key actually keywords when we speak about the rhetoric of Ayatollah Khamenei, Iran's supreme leader, is resistance. And this is just part and parcel of the Iranian political revolutionary discourse over the past few years and decades, and that may be going to be continued. Speaking of the succession, and of course the person who is going to take the office, whether or not there is going to be a shift, and how paradigmatic or slight this shift could be remains to be seen. But for a considerable amount of certainty, we can say that the legacy that we are talking about from Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Khamenei is coming from the previous supreme leader of the country, Ayatollah Khamenei, and then this is deeply rooted when it comes to the ideologies inside the Islamic Republic, and on that we can say that there might be a change from one person to another, but the ideological foundations are still out there, and that's going to be highly effective when it comes to the trajectory of Iran's behavior for the years down the road.
Now, Ali, you heard Tawhid there. He's talking about, the legacy, what the Supreme Leader is going to leave behind. He's going to leave behind a symbol. Now, we were talking about this very briefly just earlier. Has Donald Trump made him inadvertently a much stronger symbol than he was before?
Well, all depends on how things are going to end up with this war. Of course, for his supporters, of course, for those who believe in the Wilayat al-Faqih, which is the doctrine that the Islamic Republic or the Islamic Revolution came with, he is going to be a symbol. He is going to be cemented as a symbol, and the fact that he was killed will elevate him to the probably the same level of Khomeini, who was the founder of the Republic and the man who made the revolution. Ali Khamenei will become almost equal to Khomeini given this legacy. Now, with respect to what's going to happen to Iran after Khamenei, this is, of course, a big question, because this is a new chapter, it's a new page. We are watching to see whether his own line will continue with respect to the thoughts, the ideas, or there's going to be a more revolutionary line, more than him, or more pragmatic. This all depends on how the Iranian establishment wants to see itself landing. Does it want to go for a complete confrontation and resistance, will continue the path of resistance that Khamenei was preaching, or it wants to go back to pragmatism and adopt let me say, more rational point of view. Though Khamenei on some occasions was kind of described or said to be irrationally rational in the past few years.
One of the things that he did do, and he did do very successfully, is solidify the Islamic Revolution as almost an independent institution, apart from the country itself, so it could survive a strike like this. Now, he will be remembered for that, but this is now going to be problematic moving forward, because it's going to get strikes on it by the Americans. The Americans want to destroy the Islamic Revolution. The fact that its very strength invites US attack, right?
Well, now, given the fact that he was killed, and to his supporters he is the martyr, this could create a situation where they want to go more towards confrontation. Now, how let me say, the decision makers in the Islamic Republic are going to frame the next steps, and how are they going to because at the end, there is a saying that Khamenei said, the main task and duty is to keep the Islamic Republic, Hafz al-Nizam, which is preserving the Nizam, preserving the system. So will preserving the system be in confrontation, or will it be in pragmatism? Even Khomeini goes another mile, extra mile, when he says preserving the system is even a priority to the life of the infallible, of the Imam, of the Mahdi. If the Mahdi is alive and there is this comparison between his life, him being alive, or the system, then he wants the system to continue. So this will tell us what's going to happen in the future.
Tahid, stay there. We are going to come back to you in just a moment, and you, Ali, but I'd like to bring in a view from the US. Amy Fredrickson is a Republican political strategist. She joins us live from Minneapolis, Minnesota. We have confirmation now that the Supreme Leader of Iran has been killed in a joint US-Israeli strike. This is going to have a profound impact on Iran, but it's very likely that Donald Trump is going to take a victory lap and he's going to say that perhaps major combat operations have now come to an end because of this, and he's going to use what we've heard from American time and time again, the Venezuela model. Do you think that this is the Venezuela model?
Well, I think it's some version of the Venezuela model. It certainly is going to have, as you said, a profound impact. It is going to reset the table in the region, just as the move on Venezuela reset the table in our neighbors to the south. And so in some ways, that's true. And we also had a very disciplined, coordinated, precise attack that was able to very quickly
Amy, it was an attack that killed members of his family. Let's not forget that. They did kill members of his family.
That's right. And in Venezuela, we had the removal, and here we have the death. And certainly the leader that's been there for 36 years. And so I think, the strike is really not what's going to, define the success of this for the Trump administration or not. It's, I think, the next 72 hours and how things are handled and how disciplined they remain on mission.
When you say 72 hours, I mean, I get that that's not an arbitrary deadline. There is, things that have to take place. A congressional hearing can't be done until Tuesday on the legality of this strike. So let's talk about before we get into the external politics, let's talk about the internal politics within the US. He's being criticized by Republicans and Democrats for this being an illegal strike. How much internal political pressure is he under?
He is under some, and he will continue to be right up until hearings. But I will also say he also has bipartisan support. And we have Senator Fetterman from Pennsylvania that has voiced his support for the actions taken. So it's mixed on both sides, but falls down mostly along partisan lines. And here's what I would say. I think that the administration should be working overtime to secure more support, because it provides legitimacy for the actions, and also American diplomacy is always better when it has bipartisan support. It gives us strength, and it allows people in Tehran or even Moscow to not divide us as a country.
Let's talk about diplomacy, because that's an incredibly important point that you've just made. No one's trusting the US when it comes to diplomacy. There were talks going on. There were technical talks about to take place where they were going to get down to brass tacks on Monday in Vienna. Badr al-Basadi, the Omani mediator, said, "We are so close to a deal. I'm confident that we are going to get it." And then Khamenei is killed. No one's trusting the Americans right now when it comes to diplomacy.
The question is who
Right. Well, and again, that's, I think, in the next 72 hours, right? Finding allies that will be supportive, and there have been a few that have come out and vocalized support. But I think, again, it comes to defining what we did and then being very surgical about what we do and what we don't do.
What are the options, Amy? What are the options? What's that surgical option?
Well, this can be about degrading nuclear and missile capabilities, disrupting command and control, and deterring future attacks. We have got allies in the region. We know that Iran and Tehran has said that this is going to be a region. This is going to be expanded into a regional conflict, and it behooves the U.S. to protect our forces in the area, protect our allies in the area, be mindful and protective of civilians in the area. Our fight is not with the Iranians, our fight with the Iranian people, our fight is with this regime, and doing all of that while also finding off-ramps and managing that very, very difficult, as you just said, and I agree, diplomacy. It's a lot of balls in the air.
Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Turkey have all come out and condemned the US's action. They all have said that diplomacy was the way forward. It's not just internal political pressure within the US. It's not just MAGA, his base, criticizing him. You've got regional allies, key diplomatic allies that are now wondering where they stand. This is a trifecta here. I mean, can he come back from this?
Yeah, I believe he can, and I think that success is the best antidote to all the issues that they have, and being very disciplined. You know, what I'd say is deterrence prevents wars, and recklessness causes them, and the difference is discipline. And now we need to see from the Trump administration a very disciplined approach on all these levels, and that could be the difference, or it could be the undoing.
How do you get to that discipline when no one believes your diplomatic negotiations are either serious and people are going? One person on our air said that an Iranian said, we don't even believe that they were serious negotiations. We believe they were just stalling for time to attack us. How do you get back from that?
Well, again, I think you have to work. There's the things that people say publicly, and there's the things that nations say privately to themselves, and you have to have both of those channels open. And it is going to be difficult, given Oman's statement right before the attacks that they believe they were close to a deal. Now, you know, clearly the U.S. may come out and say we did not believe the words that we were hearing at the table for these reasons, but outlining that is going to be important to this. And I'm not sure how successful the Trump administration can be, but also being powerful and quick and careful in the region will contribute to some success there as well. Because, you know, attacks on Riyadh, attacks on Qatar, like all of these things are not also making Iran popular in the region as well. And so there are things that can be worked. And you also have folks like Moscow, you have China that are going to be working actively against us to sow the seeds of doubt even more and use those exact words that you're just talking about against us, that we were not serious at the table.
Amy Frederickson, a Republican political strategist, thank you so much for your point of view.
Thank you.
What the response should be, the policies.
Countries and regional powers have reacted to the joint military operation on Iran. Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez says his government rejects the military actions against Iran. The EU's foreign policy chief Kaja Kallas has called the developments in the region perilous, but also says the Iranian government poses a serious threat to global security. Meanwhile, Russia has urged an immediate end to the attacks on Iran. Moscow says the situation must be returned to the path of political and diplomatic settlement. The Chinese Foreign Ministry has called for an immediate stop of the military actions and resumptions of dialogue and negotiation and efforts to uphold peace and stability in the Middle East. Mike Hanna joins us now from Washington, D.C. Mike, we'll get into the internal politics in a minute, but very strong words there coming from the international community. Donald Trump's, the administration has got to be taking those seriously.
Escalation to happen between Israel,
Yes,
US,
perhaps
and
they are
Iran.
up to a point,
So
but
that
President
is the
Trump is
case.
absolutely
But
insistent
right
that
now,
this
from what
action
we
being carried
understand,
out in cooperation with
the
Israel
frontrunners
is
who
for the
could
good of the
succeed
United
Khamenei
States.
include
He
Moshtaba
insists that it
Khamenei
is
himself,
to
the son,
protect U.S. sovereignty,
Sadiq
but also, he
Larijani,
says,
a
to
close
protect the
aide,
wider world, which has
Muhammad
faced
Mir
actions from
Bagheri and
Iran.
Mohsen
So
Araki, as
basically,
well as
Donald Trump
Hossein
will remain, I believe,
Khomeini,
unapologetic
who is
about
the
this, despite the
grandson of
international
the
criticism
previous
that he's
supreme leader
getting.
Khomeini. So those are the people who are key and
Sorry,
could
Mike,
be very, very
I want to
important
talk
when
to you
it comes
about
to
the internal
the
politics here as well.
selection
Now, it
of
splits
the next
into
leadership.
two, doesn't
But
it?
yes,
You've got
Ali
the Congress,
Larijani, also
who
very
have been
important
critical
leader
on both
and
sides of
one
the aisle, but,
who's
you know,
been
the
very close to
Republicans
the
generally backing Donald Trump.
to the
And then
supreme
you've
leader.
got his
He
base, the
also
MAGA
is
base, who has come out
being
and
considered. So
absolutely
these are people
criticised
who
him
are being
for saying
considered
this is
for
not what
now.
we signed up
Reports
for.
coming in and
So he's got
visuals
this
coming in,
internal
Maria,
pressure
of
as well.
a
But
massive
if he
traffic
gets the
jam in
success out
the
of this, does
area
that go away?
around Khamenei's residence. There are a lot
That's
of
an
people who are
excellent
gathering
question.
outside
There
the
is
residence.
certainly some
So
in
yes,
MAGA who are deeply opposed to this
expect
operation.
massive
They
funeral
believe that it is
processions
not
in
in
Iran
U.S.
in
interest, which is
the
something
coming days,
that
from the
President
top
Trump said
leadership
would be the
to the
centerpiece of
topmost
his
leader
second term. He said it during
having
the
been killed in
campaign.
these
He made it
operations.
clear since he's
The
been
question is what
in
happens
office for the
now,
second time as well,
and
that the U.S. should not
if
get into
Iran
outside
will
wars,
agree
'cause
for a
it's not
pause,
necessarily
and
in American
can there be a
interest.
pause
Some of
given
his
the fact
members of his MAGA
that
movement are
Khamenei
reminding him
himself
of
has
this. They're
been
not
killed,
deeply
as the
upset
Iranian
about
media
the
is
fact that this
reporting?
operation has
Reports
gone
coming in
ahead.
of
There's
the
upset
USS
too in
Abraham
Congress,
Lincoln.
where
That
particularly
is
Democrats say that they
the
received no news
missile
of
which
the
was
impending
used.
attack.
And
That they have
more
not been
details
briefed
on
it,
that will
and
start
that
coming
the
in as
end
well.
is
The
Congress
Islamic
that has the
Revolutionary
power
Guard
to
Corps
declare war, not the
would
president,
likely
not the
launch
executive.
hundreds
So
of,
there is
as a
that
Shahid,
kind of
136
anger,
drones
within the United
simultaneously
States
to
domestically
exhaust
from his
American
traditional supporters in
interceptor
MAGA, but also
stockpiles.
from
Who
some
manages
members
the
of Congress
entire
who,
arsenal is
interestingly
the big
enough,
question
do
again.
include a couple of
Who's,
Republicans who've
who will
expressed
be
concern about
deploying
President Trump's
all these, because the
unilateral
USS
decision,
Abraham
to
Lincoln
take this
never
action
operates
without the
alone,
approval
and that
or
is
indeed
what
the knowledge of
was
Congress.
used in this
Mike, stay there.
precision
We're gonna come back
strike.
to you in,
It is
just a
protected
few
by a
minutes,
carrier
but you
strike
are
group.
watching our
And
continuing
escorting
coverage of the
destroyers
joint
utilize
Israeli and US
the
strikes
highly
on Iran.
advanced
I'm
Aegis
Imran Khan.
combat
In the
system
last
and
hour,
SM-6
Iranian state media has
helicopter
confirmed the
interceptor
death of the
missiles to
country's
shoot
supreme
down
leader, Ali Khamenei,
incoming
in
threats
those
from
attacks.
hundreds
40
of
days
missiles,
public mourning
100
has
of
been
miles
declared.
away.
Khamenei's daughter,
In
grandchild,
fact,
and
another
two
piece of
other
breaking
family
news that is
members
coming
were
in
also
is
killed in those strikes.
the Iran Revolutionary
The
Guard
follows
has
a
reacted
joint
on
US and
Khamenei's
Israeli
death,
aerial bombardment
and they are
targeting
saying
Iranian
that this
military
is a huge loss,
Iranian media have reported
that
more
they
explosions
have
in
lost a
the
great
capital,
revolutionary
Tehran.
leader,
Retaliation
martyrdom
missile
at
and
hands
drone
of
strikes
wicked
in Israel
terrorists.
and
Iran
military
saying
bases in
the
the region.
Khamenei death in holy month of Ramadan. This is the month of Ramadan. It's certainly a holy month, and this is what Iran is now saying, that there has been martyrdom. They have lost a great revolutionary leader. So the confirmation coming in from the Iranian media, now Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps has confirmed that Khamenei is dead. Yes, and that they have lost a great revolutionary leader, martyrdom at hands of terrorists. Khamenei has died in the holy month of Ramadan, and hence this is going to be seen as martyrdom, as they are saying. So confirmation now coming in by multiple sources, Geeta, first the Iranian media and now the Revolutionary Corps, of which Khamenei was the head.
Well, that's right. The Supreme Leader has been killed. Massive gathering outside the residence of the Supreme Leader, as visuals trickle in from inside Iran. The process, like I was saying, the four-member expert now are going to decide on the next leadership, but it is already decided that the acting Supreme Leader is going to be Ali Larijani. According to some of the reports, that the acting Supreme Leader will be Ali Larijani. He is the Secretary General of the National Security Council, and he will take over and oversee, because there cannot be a vacuum in a scenario where Iran is at war. And once things settle down a little, then the four-member expert are going to look at all the heads, the clerical heads who could then lead the nation from the religious realm, and that could be the son of Khamenei, Moshtaba Khamenei, Sadiq Larijani, Mohammad Mir Bagheri, Mohsen Araki, or Hassan Khomeini, who was the grandson of the previous Supreme Leader, Ayatollah Khomeini. So these are the names that are doing the rounds, but Ali Larijani right now is the most powerful person in the country.
We saw that post that was put out by Reza Pahlavi as well, the exiled crown prince. How should that be seen? He has again told the people that he has urged the people of Iran to engage in an uprising. Because you were in Tehran, Geeta, what was the mood? Was it against Khamenei, or was he seen as a leader who was there for them?
Well, there are people who are very, very unhappy with the regime, and we put out those interviews as well of people who are feeling the pinch when it comes to the economics. The economy is in a shambles. There are those who were feeling a little bit of relief because Tehran no longer had the moral police that it did during Mahsa Amini's time, and the protest did lead to relaxation because the bigger war was the threat, the looming threat of an American attack. So we did see a lot of women not really practicing hijab and not covering their heads. Having said that, there was a lot of dissent and unhappiness with the regime, but there were many who actually supported the regime. The question over here, Maria, is that those who did not support the Khamenei, did they really support the crown prince? Pahlavi, because they've lived under the Shah as well, and there's massive corruption even then. There are most of those who oppose the regime want a democratic change. They want people to select the next leader. It cannot be somebody propped up and brought in from abroad. For that, he had maybe a little over 30% popularity rating, Reza Pahlavi. But are there people within Iran who want or seek change and reform? Yes. Are there people who think a weaker Iran would help, but not one that is controlled by Israel? Certainly. Do they want help from the United States of America? Of course. But when Israel comes into the picture, a lot of the opinion and views change. So in the larger context, we'll have to wait and see how people react, not just to the death, but to the aftermath. There have been protests in some universities in Iran, which are anti-government and pro-government as well. But are the anti-government forces, like in the recent past, really going to come out into the streets and ensure that the regime is not allowed to crack down like the last time around? Because this time, the focus is not just internal dissent, even if it is created by outside forces. The focus is going to be internal dissent as also external threat. And in that, can then Iran manage this two-pronged war?
What happens within and what happens from outside? The challenge is going to be two-pronged, multi-pronged, I would say also.
Why Iraqi also threatened the countries openly is that should these attacks continue, the retaliation is going to be against the countries and allies in the region, and not directly on American soil. But hitting US bases is American soil. So yes, those attacks are going to continue.
Geeta, the 86-year-old did not have a designated successor. So are we assuming that his son emerges as the successor? Because I've been reading reports which actually highlight that this could throw Tehran's future into doubt and raise the prospect of perhaps a protracted conflict.
No, absolutely, because there is going to be a problem in selecting the next. For now, there's going to be an acting supreme leader, and that most probably could be Ali Larijani. Maria, even when there were conversations, and this we've been hearing for a few years, at least for some time in the past, on who the next supreme leader is going to be, not because he was going to be killed by Israel and America, because he was weak, frail, and very old. So a succession plan was needed, and there was a succession plan in place where they were looking at various people, and in that there were reports that were coming in that Khamenei's son Moshtaba was being ruled out, that he was not the front runner. But it does seem like in a scenario where the father's been quote unquote martyred, then there will be chances of Moshtaba taking over, but not necessarily so. There's a council in place, the Assembly of Experts, as they're called. That assembly is going to decide who the next supreme leader is going to be, and there are contenders. There are those who are very close to the Ayatollah, their advisors, aid. There are those who have worked in the clergy for a very long time, and then there are people like Ali Larijani, who not so long ago took over as Secretary General of the National Security Council, which means the entire security apparatus is under him, whether it's the military wing, the police, the defense, intelligence, all of that. And he certainly is an important person right now, and he in all probability will be leading, will be the head and the face of the war as we speak. He's already put out a tweet saying and vowing, avenging the death of the leadership and the action carried out by Israel and the US. So the first statement by the future leadership in current scenario has already been put out. It has already come in, and right now Iran certainly focused on retaliatory attacks rather than anything else. But there will be, to quell the dissent and protests, there will be massive funeral processions, and not just of the leadership. There are children who have been killed, Maria. So there is some way that they're going to try to get the country to see sense in fighting this one out, to keep Israel at bay. And West Asia, the argument is the same. Do they want a weak Iran or a very, very strong Israel? I don't think the Arab world at this point in time would want. They would neither want a nuclear Iran nor would they want a very strong Israel.
Yes, so that's the choice for the Arab world. The GCC nations who have now witnessed multiple attacks by Iran in the last 24 hours. What happens now? What happens in a post-Khamenei situation in Iran? And Geeta, reports are that he was in his office when he was attacked and killed. So the details of the complete whereabouts of Khamenei was known to the forces, the US-Israel forces, and the question now is what happens to Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, what happens to the military intelligence of Iran in his absence, because there are reports of 7 important leaders and the officials of the entire military establishment who have been killed, along with Ayatollah Khamenei, who was killed in his office when that's where he was present. He was 86-year-old, has been at the top for 36 years, and perhaps he had not revealed who after him, had not declared his successor, but it was largely seen that his son would be taking charge in his absence. What happens on the streets of Iran now will be something that we'll be waiting and seeing. But as reports are coming in that there is a crowd which has started gathering outside the home of Ayatollah Khamenei. Let me bring in Mir again on this. Mir, are you able to pick up any details of what's happening in Iran right now? What's happening in Tehran and in other cities?
Not only in terms of what happens in Iran and for the Iranian people, but also...
Well, there has been massive outpouring of people on the streets. Obviously, everyone is going towards the residence or the place of attack where Ali Khamenei was killed. Everyone is trying to reach that location. And obviously, there are people, elements who are happy. We're getting visuals from some parts of Iran. There have been celebrations, but mostly it's outpouring of grief because as we have been, in fact, explaining, the the importance of Ali Khamenei. Now, as far as the succession plan is concerned, you have to understand that they would see this coming. So they would definitely have a contingency succession plan. And we know that this regime had at least 3 or 4 successors for every person they lost. Now, be it the IRGC, the top commanders or the political leadership. So they have a contingency plan. Sources say that could be implemented and you could have successors, and they have the system to absorb this hit. So that's what people think about this particular regime, because they were literally living on the edge. They knew Israel and US is going to attack, and they always had their target on Ali Khamenei. But you have to see beyond Ali Khamenei the fact that this system that they had evolved, they were preparing for this. So you can expect a succession line, and for every person they lose, they have at least 3 or 4 people who are ready to succeed him. So that really is the way this regime had planned this and planned its contingencies. But there could be turmoil, there could be visuals of chaos on the streets of Tehran and other places of Iran, quite expected considering the stature of the leader, his connection, and the way he had led Iran all these years. Not only in Iran, but in various places you have Muslim population, Shia population who could react to this. So this is going to have far-reaching consequences as far as developing situation and protests in various parts are concerned. But as far as Tehran is concerned, a lot of people on the streets right now. We have reports that there have been protest demonstrations. There are people who are trying to reach the location, and then you also have places where people are celebrating this. So mixed mood, but most probably you will see lots and lots of people in the funeral procession. Many people really mourning this. But as far as the core decision-making group is concerned, they would have prepared for this, and you will see a contingency plan, and that is something that definitely will irk US and Israel, because if their target was Khamenei, then obviously nothing is going to change on the ground as far as this regime is concerned. But if they have plans of toppling this government, we do not see that happening, at least as of now, considering that all these bombing raids, they did these missions previously also. This time around, they have gone a step ahead, tried to wipe out the political leadership. But will that really change the regime, change the institutionalized system that has been in place as far as this Islamic regime is concerned? That's the big question. As of now, it seems that there definitely is going to be a contingency plan as far as the big people in this regime is concerned. And you will see replacements in the coming time, because this is a very well-organized system as far as the Islamic regime is concerned. They have been ruling Iran for years and years now. But yes, massive loss as far as the face of this regime is concerned. Ali Khamenei was a spiritual leader, unlike anyone. The kind of following he had and the kind of die-hard supporters he had in the regime and otherwise as well, and not only in Iran.
So the death of Ayatollah Ali Khamenei in the middle of this war, or the strikes, and the Iranian retaliation has turned this from one more flare-up movement into what will be now an open question. What now? Will there be pause, or will this be seeing massive escalation, retaliation on the part of Iran as well? And moments when Khamenei's death was made official, Iran's press TV anchor actually broke down live. And those are the visuals coming in. I'm going to let that play out. And 40 days of national mourning has been announced in Iran after their supreme leader was killed in the precision strikes while he was at his office in Iran. His daughter, son-in-law, and other family members have been killed as well.
رهبر و امام مسلمین حضرت آیت الله العظمی سید علی حسینی
امام خامنه‌ای الیه راجعون. ملت بزرگ ایران، روح بلند پیشوای ملت بزرگ ایران و پیشقراول امت اسلامی حضرت امام خامنه‌ای با نوشیدن شهد گوارای شهادت در ماه مبارک رمضان به ملکوت اعلی پیوست. شورای عالی امنیت ملی در این زمینه بیانیه‌ای به این شرح صادر کرده است.
As you know, some of your colleagues.
روح بلند و ملکوتی کوه نستوه ولایت، پدر مهربان امت، رهبر و امام مسلمین، حضرت آیت الله العظما سید علی حسینی خامنه‌ای در راه سربلندی حرم جمهوری اسلامی ایران شهد شهید گوارای شهادت را نوشیدند و به ملکوت اعلی پیوست.
The 40 days of mourning declared in Iran, and the risk for Tehran is a double crisis from within and also from outside. They have to choose a new leader while trying to suppress a population which has already taken to the streets, which has already shown that they are against the president's regime. So the question is, what happens now? Washington and Tel Aviv are framing this operation Epic Fury as an operation to shatter Iran's nuclear, missile and command capacity, and a formal regime change as well. The formal regime change may begin now, but will it happen from within, or will there be somebody sitting in Los Angeles in Raza Pahlavi who could be brought in? That's the next question that I wish to ask Geeta. Reza Pahlavi took to Twitter immediately, urging the people of Iran to take charge and indulge in uprising again. But any uprising at this point will be met with similar kind of crackdown that we saw last time around, Geeta. The clampdown will be harder and stronger now.
The latest one that we saw is...
Well, that's right. The situation in the announcements have been made. People are being asked to come to engage Square and Tehran University. The processions are going to be big. A counter to that in the streets right now is going to lead to massive crackdown back home in Iran. But Maria, as much as they are trying to hit the West Asian region to ensure that they feel the pinch and the pressure mounts on US and Israel to back off. This time around, it's not going to be a focused effort to quell protests back home within Iran, because their forces, their energy, and their focus, everything is going to be diverted and into two areas. One is the domestic front, and the other is the international front. And that's why we'll have to see whether if the people are actually going to be able to sustain massive protests within the country. But remember, when things such as the killing of the
from one side
leader takes place and there's an Israeli hand to that, you will see the kind of gathering in Iran that certainly is unprecedented. So you will see massive outpour of people in the streets of Iran, and it's going to be very, very difficult at that juncture to have protests to topple the regime. In terms of Reza Pahlavi, who was first to come on and say that, the regime needs to be toppled, hopes of maybe coming back and taking over, even
from the official channels
in Venezuela, the example was very clear. Just because the regime was had been toppled and Nicolas Maduro had been taken, it was absolutely clear that America is in control and that America could have decided. They didn't go ahead and just give that position of leadership to the opposition leader, Machado, who won the Nobel Peace Prize. They in fact ensured that the acting president, Delcy Rodriguez, who took over because she was the vice president, continues. In this case, if or should there be a complete vacuum, like Donald Trump said, he'd want the people then to decide on taking over, but knowing very well that a complete toppling of the regime and a change of government and guard would mean that Iran would find that the US would finally have
any logistical support
pro-US regime or establishment in Iran, which is what they exactly want. Bringing in Reza Pahlavi might have a pro-US face, but not one that who has acceptability within Iran. Not complete acceptability for sure. Many people were not okay with the Shah regime, not because they were liberal and forward-looking, more so to do with the fact that the policies were bad, that he did not run the country efficiently and well. There was massive corruption by the Shah and the system particularly. So there are many complaints. There is hardly any popularity of Reza Pahlavi, but there is certainly going to be a plan on how to bring about elections where people from the ground are elected and
now onwards, because there have been some overnight developments. All the viewers who are joining us now, Geeta, continue to be with us in this conflict. What started as a conflict has now taken a dramatic turn with the reported death of Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei in US-Israeli strikes, and the questions are being raised which are very urgent in nature as to what happens next in this entire region. Iran has now vowed revenge against Khamenei's death. Iran is saying that great crime won't go unanswered. Iran has in fact rained fire in UAE, Bahrain and Kuwait. So fresh round of strike now by Iran in all those military installations and other important assets of United States in these countries in the GCC, in the Middle East. Iran has gone on to say that most intense offensive operation will begin soon. So they are warning of perhaps a more intense offensive operation, which is likely to target the bases of Israel and US and attacks in UAE, Bahrain and Kuwait. We saw earlier today Burj Al Arab, an important asset, a luxurious hotel in Dubai being targeted by Iran. Similarly, there were targets of other hotels in Palm Jumeirah area of Dubai last night. So details which are coming in is that Iran has vowed revenge. They are saying that they would be beginning or starting a more offensive operation that will begin soon. Khamenei's passing certainly creates immediate uncertainty in Tehran, and who decides what happens to the arsenal, who controls that, and who decides what will be Iran's next move in the absence of Khamenei and the entire second rung of leadership in many ways, with top leaders who are heading various important military bodies and defense bodies within Iran have now been eliminated. The US and Israel have described their operation as targeted strikes on Iran's nuclear sites, missile facilities and command centers, not a full invasion. But the question is this not then, Geeta?
I think really that is what China is most worried about, this spiraling out of control, affecting other countries and ending up in a protracted war that
Mir, come in on this. The question is that there will be a cycle of retaliation which will happen. Each strike will potentially see a broader war. Is that what we are seeing now? Iran will retaliate. That's what they have vowed. And there will be protests also that we saw a few weeks ago within Iran. That is also likely to continue. So what happens now in the entire Middle East? This is unprecedented, never seen before, and perhaps there'll be more uncertain times that we are entering into.
Joining us from Washington is Brent Sadler.
Absolutely, Maria. We also would want to see whether the limits of the US-Israel action plan, where does it stop? Ground invasion is not possible. We know that the war as of now has been fought aerial. There has been intense aerial bombardment as far as US-Israel is concerned. They're trying to cripple Iran's defense, its missile arsenal, its nuclear facilities, and now obviously the political side where they're trying to wipe out the complete political leadership. Ali Khamenei is dead. But what next? How far is US-Israel willing to go to ensure a regime change? Was Ali Khamenei only their target? Because if that is the case, then obviously this is not going to ensure a regime change. Because as I said, the system is way too institutionalized in the last 30, 35 years. They have an action plan. They were living on the edge. They knew this is going to come. And in the past also, we've seen several top commanders, political leaders of Iran being killed, be it the tacit or clandestine Israeli action or direct war-like situation like we are having right now. So what next? Obviously, US and Israel are banking on domestic unrest, people who are against this regime to rise up now because they have created a situation for them. They have killed the most important leader of this regime, and now they're banking on the fact that the people, elements who are against the regime will rise and topple the government. Now, whether that is possible is the big question, whether they've done their homework on that front. We saw an unrest in Iran not so long ago, but that was quelled effectively, that was taken control effectively by the regime. But will Ali Khamenei's death really changed those dynamics? That internal situation in Iran is the big question. As of now, it seems that the regime and the way they have planned things, they are still in control. The command and control is being handled. While the face is missing now, we may see that face coming up in the coming days as they announce the succession. But what next as far as the military confrontation is concerned, whether that will be enough to achieve what US and Israel have set out for, that is the regime change, it seems difficult as of now because a ground invasion is not possible. So now they're banking on internal elements. Obviously, Mossad and the intelligences definitely would have worked on the ground to ensure that those elements really rise, they'll support them. But whether that will be enough to topple this regime is the big question, because as I said, they have succession plan, they had their contingency plan, and that you'll see in action in the coming time. Aerial bombardment, the US and Israel can do that and do that intensely, but we know that's not going to be enough to really ensure and effect a regime change. So that is the big question. That is something that we'll see panning out in the coming time. But as of now, it will be a time of mourning. And Ali Khamenei's death can really work in a counter manner, because this could gel people together. There could be mourning, and there could be this wave of emotions really taking over as far as the public in Iran is concerned. So this could be counterproductive as well for the US and Israeli plans. So all those things are possibilities, but as of now, focus on the streets in Tehran, which are filled with people who are marching towards the site of Ali Khamenei, where he was killed, and you will see a lot of grief on the streets and huge processions as we see this really panning out in the coming hours.
So what is now clear is that this entire conflict is an uncharted territory. We do not know what happens now onwards, Geeta. 40 days of national mourning announced in Iran. But this tradition could spark more protest. We have seen how the public anger could also flare up. We do not know what will happen next. And also, Geeta, what happens to all those rebel groups, the Hezbollahs, the Houthis? Is there a fear now of multi-front war?
The simple problem is the Americans.
Well, that's a very critical aspect of the war.
Keep saying it, right? I have difficulty believing that they'd go to all that.
Okay, Geeta, I'll try and fix your audio in just a bit. Let me bring in Sandeep, who's joining us as well. Sandeep, overnight developments, a lot of developments. The entire world now is in an uncharted territory. We do not know what will happen now onwards, what will be the nature of retaliation coming in from Iran. They are saying that there would be high-risk zone. That is what we are looking at now. So, Sandeep, what happens now onwards? Assembly of experts to pick new leader from clerics and IRGC insiders. But several IRGC leaders, the second-rung leadership, their key figures have been targeted as well.
This is a scenario that Iran has prepared for several months now, and they knew exactly what was coming their way. And in fact, there were reports which said that Ayatollah Khamenei had asked the Iranian administration to prepare for precisely these kind of decapitation strikes, which is airstrikes that would kill, assassinate key regime figures in the hope that the government would collapse. So his idea, his instructions to all governments right down to the provincial level was to have 3 and 4 layers of replacements for each person that is killed. And that is something that they've seen with Hezbollah as well. This is exactly how Israel has taken out Hezbollah. But of course, Iran is much, much bigger. And this is the strategy that they've been putting into place. So the priority, of course, for Iran now would be to find a replacement for Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. We don't know who it could be. It's either his son, it could be Ayatollah Khamenei's grandson has been spoken about. That would be the priority because Iran is, of course, an Islamic theocracy. It needs a supreme leader to give it directions. And Ayatollah Khamenei has been one of the longest served leaders, not just in Iran, but in West Asia. More than 3 decades he's ruled Iran. He's actually seen the setting up of the IRGC, the Islamic Revolutionary Guards Council, one of the most important organizations in Iran. In fact, the most important organization in Iran today, which controls all aspects of power, including the military. It has a parallel military of its own. It controls the ballistic missiles. The attacks that you're seeing across West Asia today on Dubai and other places, they are actually being controlled by the IRGC. So there is a theory that the IRGC could now, in fact, take over the country as a kind of a military rule in the interim before Iran can elect a supreme leader of its own. But this, again, there is no surprise here. There is no out of the blue kind of thing. While the death of Ayatollah Khamenei is a shock to many, this is a scenario that Iran would have prepared for the last couple of weeks. They knew exactly what is to be done, because if they don't, replace the leaders, it could actually see deep instability. It could lead to civil unrest, and the hopes of the United States and Israel that there would be public protests, exactly the way we saw in 1979. When the Shah of Iran, Mohammad Reza Shah Pahlavi, had to flee in January of 1979, that is 47 years ago. He fled after almost a year of protests, unrest, civil, unrest, all of that. He had to run away in January, and that is when Imam Khomeini returned from France and he took over Iran, and he announced the Islamic theocracy of it that rules Iran today on the 1st of April 1979. So Iran is at a 1979 moment, you can call it that. That is, of course, the hope of the United States and Israel, to see that they could effect a regime change from the air by carrying on multiple assassinations of key regime figures across the country, to hope that there is instability, there is civil unrest, and people then choose a new leader. The hope of the regime is, of course, the priority of the regime from day one, from 1979, has been regime survival. And that's the reason that they have set up all of this, multiple networks. The IRGC is so strong precisely to protect the regime from its external foes, like the United States, Israel, that are currently attacking them. The axis of resistance is also to protect Iran, the regime, the Islamic Revolution itself. So all of these things are they all boil down to protecting the regime. And this is what we're going to see in the next couple of hours. This is actually Iran's 1979 moment again. If they survive this, if the regime can wither away these series of airstrikes that have been going on for almost 24 hours now, the regime would continue for a few more years. If they cannot.
Recall for our viewers, Sandeep, since you're saying that this is Iran's 1979 moment, in 1979, what really happened in terms of, did Iran react the way they did in attacking and targeting US assets in the entire Middle East? You have a situation right now where the US CIA facility in Dubai has been targeted. Similar attacks and targeting has been happening in Bahrain, in Jordan, in other parts as well. And it's not just the US military facilities or assets, it's also of the hotels, the luxurious hotels that are being attacked.
Well, interesting question, Maria, and the answer to that is no. Iran in 1979, when the Shah fled, it was a power vacuum. Ayatollah Khamenei returned. He set up an Islamic rule which began in April of 1979. And Iran went through an intense period of change. There was they were very inward looking, but let's not forget that they had an extremely powerful military. They had the most powerful military in West Asia, as equal to, if not most capable than the Israeli military. Now, the Shah of Iran for more than 3 decades had been building up this military with US assistance. Now, there is a story there that the F-14 fighter jet, the fighter jet that Tom Cruise flew in Top Gun, the first part, was actually funded by the Shah of Iran. And that's the kind of power that he had. When he exited, when he fled Iran, there was complete disarray. They were met with Western sanctions. The regime had to establish itself. The Ayatollah Khomeiни's regime had to establish itself. Iraq seized that opportunity. Under Saddam Hussein, they invaded. So the Iran-Iraq war went on for almost a decade from there, from 1979-80, from 1980 to about 1988. So almost 8 years of constant fighting between Iran and Iraq. They did not have the time to focus on the greater Middle East. They did, of course, threaten to shut the Straits of Hormuz. That is what they have done, which is possibly the last card that we are talking about that Iran has to play, which is to stop the Straits of Hormuz. There are reports that are coming out that they may have already done that. They have sent out instructions to shut, that no ships can pass through the Straits of Hormuz. But the point of attacking US bases, that is a capability that has been set up over the last 2 or 3 decades. Now, this happens because the IRGC became so powerful, it set up this axis of resistance. This happened, of course, under the reign of Ayatollah Khamenei, late 1980s, post the Iran-Iraq war, when he set up the IRGC into what it is today. It's the most powerful military force in the region. It is more powerful than the Iranian military, which is the Artesh, which doesn't have the kind of capabilities that the IRGC has. The bases that we are talking about, the dozen or so US bases, these are all under Central Command, CENTCOM. I call it the Trump CENTCOM empire, which is the largest network of air and sea bases owned by any country in any part of the world. They are all across West Asia, from as far as Jordan, Kuwait, Iraq, Bahrain, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, UAE. They're all over the place. And over the last few years, Iran worked out the strategy. They knew that the US and Israel were coming for them. The strategy was, we saw the first indications of that when Major General Soleimani was killed about 6 years back under the first Trump presidency. Now, Qasem Soleimani is one of the most key figures in the IRGC. He was part of the Iranian Revolution in 1979. He was authorized by Ayatollah Khamenei to set up this axis of resistance. The Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, Kataib Hezbollah in Iraq, all of this was the work of this one man, Major General Qasem Soleimani. And it is believed that under his command, they built up the capability to target US bases like Al-Ubaid, Dahran, all of these places in the event of an attack on Iran. Iran has said that in the past. We've seen it after Qasem Soleimani's assassination in 2020 in Iraq by the first Trump administration. Iran retaliated against the US bases in the region, but there was a difference there. They called them, they warned them, they said that, look, we are going to be striking at your bases. They wanted to avoid casualties. At the same time, they wanted to prove a point. Now, we saw that again last year to a limited impact, where they targeted a few of these bases. During the 12-day war, during the US attacks on Iraq.
Since you're saying that this is 1979 moment for Iran, I want to talk about the 7 IRGC generals who have been killed, including Ali Shamkhani. Then, if the second rung has been impacted, besides the top leader himself, then is Iran prepared for this?
Well, Maria, they have prepared we are being told up to 4 levels down. So if the generals are knocked out, the brigadiers will take over. If the brigadiers are knocked out, the colonels will take over. If the colonels are knocked out, the majors will take over. That's the kind of hierarchy that they've built. That's the redundancy that they've built into this kind of thing. They've figured that they have no other way of handling this wave of decapitation strikes. It's very interesting. The kind of attacks that we are seeing are possibly the largest decapitation strikes ever launched post the Second World War. Now, in the Second World War, of course, you had leaders being taken out. The most famous example of a decapitation strike that I can think of in the Second World War was Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, who was killed by the United States. He's the architect of Pearl Harbor. They knew where he was flying in 1943, and they sent a long-range fighter mission to track him and kill him in one of the islands in Southeast Asia. Now, think of 100 times that. That is what you're seeing in the 21st century with the use of AI, with the use of air power, all of these things, C4ISR, satellites, this entire surveillance grid the United States and Israel have set up. I mean, these are the most capable frontline powers in the world today. You're seeing the kind of technology that people could not even believe. If the United States has the capability to fly into a heavily guarded country like Venezuela, extract its leader and take him back to the United States, you're seeing those kind of capabilities here at play. The combination of the US and Israel coming in and carrying out all of these decapitation strikes, Iran really has no way of handling this kind of offensive. And my sense is that they've prepared for this. The IRGC is a very large force. It's a very competent and a very capable force. It is more powerful than the Iranian military. It has very deep roots into the ground. There are 3 structures. And, when you said this is Iran's 1979 moment, there's a big difference. In 1979, you had just one military. You had the Iranian military.
Yes.
When the military turned against the Shah knew, when they refused to fire at civilian protesters, the Shah knew the game was up. In 2026, there are 3 parallel militaries inside Iran. You have the Artesh, which are the Iranian armed forces, the traditional conventional armed forces as we know it. You have the IRGC in the center, which is the most powerful military inside Iran today, which reports directly to the supreme leader. And then you have the paramilitary forces, the Basij, which are believed to be almost 1 million. These are volunteers. These were the volunteers that were set up during the Iran-Iraq war. Literally hundreds of thousands of them, child soldiers, all of that. They used everything to fight that war against Iraq, which they knew was a war of survival, basically. It was the rest of the Gulf propping Iraq and Saddam Hussein into invading Iran because they were afraid of the impact of the Iranian revolution coming into the Shia populations of their countries. So today in Iran, you have 3 parallel militaries. It's almost impossible for you to have one.
Brigadier General Ahmad Wahidi has now been named as the new IRGC chief. General Wahidi, what do we know about him?
Would lead to a usage of
yes, please. Go ahead, Sandeep. You can take that question.
Just one of the other Iranian generals, and this is a new name that we are hearing, but like I said, the IRGC is a large force. It's almost 500,000 strong. It has several military commanders. My sense is that this would be
Ahmad Wahidi. We'll try and get that corrected.
Well, let's go back to
part of the revolutionary struggle in 1979. He would have been a young officer at that time. It is, of course, the struggle, the revolution of 1979 is almost half a century old. So this is possibly somebody who would be in his 60s, and he would have been a young officer at that time. The revolution is still important. A lot of the key IRGC figures are those who've been around in 1979, and that is a very key recruitment thing for them. That they have to have been part of that, and that is one of the reasons that they would be in the IRGC right now in very key positions.
That's actually a very important point that has been made by Sandeep, something that Geeta has been highlighting, that Iran today is far more prepared than it was earlier, that they have the second and the third rung. Even if Ayatollah Khamenei has been eliminated, 7 IRGC top generals have been eliminated, perhaps the third and the fourth rung is ready to take charge and ready to take command of the entire arsenal. But the question then is, Geeta, what if any of these countries, because they have said, including UAE, that they reserve the right to react, or they reserve the right to retaliate, what happens in that case?
Well, the net security provider for the whole of West Asia that has come under attack is the United States of America. They will have to coordinate. They have their missile defense systems. They do have certain capabilities, but to have an absolute onslaught of attack on Iran, they will require American assistance. I'd like maybe Sandeep to weigh in on this one, but Ahmed Vahidi, like Sandy was saying, and he's just talking from experience, is an old guard, very old hand, born in Shiraz, was the former defense minister of Iran, a very critical figure when it comes to the IRGC. So, like I said, they did not even take time. They knew that the IRGC chief Pakpor has been taken out, and look, the very next day they appointed Ahmed Vahidi. Similarly, Mohammed Pakpor also was appointed after his predecessor was killed in action. So they did not take time, and it's not like they're choosing a very young officer at this juncture. He's a very old, seasoned IRGC officer, served in intelligence, and then further on has gone ahead and become the defense minister of the country, and then now being a critical part of the military establishment is now taking over IRGC. I'd say not the most enviable post, given that anybody who takes over as IRGC is a direct target of Israel, and they have made sure that any IRGC head is followed. There's enough intelligence to know about his whereabouts, and then is in a very specific precision strike taken out. So for now, the new IRGC chief is Ahmed Vahidi, an elite military officer who has also served in the political dispensation as the defense minister as well.
Minister of Iran under President Ibrahim Raisi, former defense minister till 2013 under Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, and he was the founder commander of the Quds Force, the external operations wing of IRGC, which is the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. So Iran has chosen the person who will be leading its security right now at this moment. The question again is, Sandeep, from now onwards, would you say that this is an uncharted territory, or is it still that moment of 1979?
Well, it is actually uncharted territory. We don't know which way it's actually going. Because like we were saying, the airstrikes that have led Iran to carry out this wave of attacks, ballistic missile, cruise missile attacks, there has been some spectacular videos of drones slamming into buildings in Palm Jumeirah in Dubai. This is Iran telling the rest of the GCC countries that this, supporting the United States has its consequences. And though their spokespersons have been saying since yesterday that they are only attacking US bases, it's very clear that many of these drones, many of these missiles have been specifically targeting iconic landmark structures in the UAE. The Jumeirah, the Burj. The Burj is an iconic structure. The Shahed 136 drone, which is believed to have struck many of these buildings, is a very accurate drone. It's not like an old Second World War missile with an enormous, CEP that lands over several kilometers, and you can say it was a mistake. These are all very specifically targeted drones, and they're all being done to send a message to the GCC countries, particularly UAE, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, to get them to pressurize the United States to stop this wave of attacks. The idea is to, of course, impact the economy of the GCC countries. Now, we've seen previous versions of this, and I take you back to 2020 or so, when the Houthis launched a wave of drone and missile attacks on Saudi Arabia's Aramco oil processing facilities, and Aramco shares took a hit. Iran has been working at this game for several years now. They've prepared these contingency plans not only to replace their leaders in the event of such decapitation strikes, but exactly how they would target all the emirates, all the monarchies in the region using their drones, missiles, and they know exactly where their vulnerable spot lies, which is the economy. The economy of the Middle East is what Iran is targeting right now. I mean, think of it. You have the Dubai airport, which is one of the busiest airports in the world. Today, that airport is completely empty. There's no passengers, no flights. The economy of the UAE, Saudi Arabia, all of this depends on tourist inflows, particularly of the UAE, which is just across the Straits of Hormuz. And that is the kind of warfare that Iran is doing. It's played this economic card now. It is waging economic warfare. There is an expression in naval warfare, it's called guerre de course. It is the war of commerce, where you target an enemy's commercial lifeline. When you're an inferior power, you don't have the ability to target his military straight on. You start targeting his commercial lifelines. It's called commerce destruction. That's exactly what Iran is doing with UAE and the other Gulf states. He's targeting the biggest visible symbols of these countries, their economic stability, their peace, their progress, prosperity, all of that, in the hope that they will pressurize the United States to call off these airstrikes. Because if these continue, given the kind of strategy that survival strategies that Iran has in place, they know that they are extremely vulnerable, and that comes back to the 1979 moment that they're going through. That if this wave of attacks continues, it is quite possible that they might actually run out of leaders at some point in the not-so-distant future. And in the future, I mean a couple of hours. This is a battle of hours that we are waging, because there is a limit to the number of weapons that the US, Israel, and of course Iran have in this. It's clear that they can't fight more than 4 or 5 days. So Iran has to ride out that storm, and it needs to do everything. It's throwing all its cards in. The Straits of Hormuz, attacking ships, tankers, is something that they have tried in the past during the 1980-88 Iran-Iraq war. They will resort to that as a last resort. In a sense, a regime under attack like this tries to expand the arc of conflict beyond itself in an attempt to drag more countries in. We saw that happening with Saddam Hussein in 1991 during the first Gulf storm, the first US-Iraq war, when Saddam Hussein began targeting Israel with Scud missiles in a hope that he would bring Israel into the conflict, thereby enlarging it, getting more countries involved. Iran, to some extent, more than 35 years later, is trying a similar strategy. It's trying to enlarge the scope of the conflict, to drag more countries in, and to build pressures on them to pressurize the United States to back off. Because finally, at the end of the day, the Gulf sheikdoms are also extremely vulnerable. They have not seen this kind of conflict in several decades. For them, the economy is primary. The oil, of course, oil supplies, that's another important thing. Who would come? Why would people invest in these countries if there is the threat of Iranian missiles flying off short distances away, 50 and 60 kilometers? Now, we've built all of these shiny hotels there. We built residential towers. Many of our film stars and our well-heeled have relocated to places in the Middle East because they offered this, vision of peace and prosperity and stability, little realizing that they're all under the shadow of Iranian ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, and that is exactly the scenario that Iran is trying to paint.
That's actually quite interesting the way you've explained it, and that explains why Iran has targeted hotels, be it the Fairmont Hotel yesterday and now the Burj Al Arab today. It is essentially those economic centers or those tourism hubs which were seen attractive to the tourists, that is being targeted. Dubai airport, as you pointed out rightly, is shut for the last 12 hours, multiple flights diverted and cancelled. So, Geeta, given the kind of preparation with which US went ahead with it, it was also prepared for the backlash to come in from Iran, and that is what Iran is doing. For them, it's a battle for survival. The regime is holding on to the straws, just trying to do everything it can to create that multi-front war. The question is, what is going to be the stand, particularly of Russia and China, Geeta?
Well, they've already reacted. They've come in with a lot of condemnation. They sought the UNSC meeting yesterday. We do know that there is going to be a massive movement when it comes to what kind of help they're willing to offer. But there's clarity at this point in time that military involvement will not suit either of the two nations, and not something that Iran expects in a scenario of war between Israel, US, and Iran, when the talks between Russia and Ukraine are moving forward. There are country interests involved, but this is beyond that. This is economics as well. They could be hit very badly if Iran falls, especially China. So yes, China will be considering options on what they should be doing, but military involvement for now looks really not an option, not like an option at all. But I do agree with Sandeep in terms of the retaliation that you're seeing, Maria. That is going to be critical. This is not a war that can stretch beyond 72 hours. And in those hours, in those days, what Iran will have to prove is the damage it is causing and it can cause in the region. That is going to certainly not just talk about or show the impact and damage and economic loss, the chaos it has created across the world because of the flight situation, and certainly that will reflect in economy and markets, but more importantly, how vulnerable this entire region really is. So taking out Iran and taking out the entire leadership might be a matter of time, but then at what cost? And are these countries willing to bear that cost? There have been conversations, the phone lines have been busy through the night between leaders of the Arab world. They've been speaking to each other, talking to each other, looking at what needs to be done. They're considering this an outrageous attack against their land and their soil. The Iranians have been very clear. They call it a retaliatory attack, not against the countries per se, but against the United States of America and its bases. But from the drone attacks that we are seeing, it has moved beyond the bases. So that explanation now completely falls flat when it comes to Iran. Iran is now trying to maybe make the pinch felt, make the hurt felt for West Asia when it comes to the option of attacking Iran. It is not possible that Israel, particularly the United States of America, would not have actually informed the allies in the region. Some of the leadership would have known that there is that this is what the plan is, whether they agree to it or not, but not keeping them in the loop. At least some of the leadership it doesn't seem like a possibility because the bases are there. Qatar, Saudi Arabia, the UAE have been frantically asking everybody to bring the tempers down, not escalate tensions, but the tensions now are at its peak, at their peak. And what we're looking at, Maria, is the repercussion and ramification of a major attack that has led to the killing of the leadership of Iran. And while the second-rung leadership is taking over immediately, Ali Larijani will be taking the calls or calling the shots in Iran when it comes to the decision from the clergy, after which, once things settle down, the assembly of experts are going to decide on the leadership within the clergy. But for now, it seems like West Asia, beyond US bases, Maria, is closer, that they are not going to spare. And more importantly, remember, the strategy will have to change a little because Khamenei is dead. And again, if Sandy's there, it would be great to get his perspective in. The Supreme Leader is dead, Maria. There are people in the streets. So now when the attacks take place, or when the attacks are carried out, they have to be very careful about civilian casualties.
Yes.
And that will be a very important strategy because the idea and the messaging has been that we do not want to kill people, we just want the regime to topple. But if there are so many people in the streets of Tehran and in various parts of Iran, then what happens?
Yes, Geeta and Sandeep continue to be with us because there is an update which is coming in from the Civil Aviation Ministry here in New Delhi, which has announced 444 flights are expected to be cancelled today due to escalating tensions involving Iran and Israel. The ministry has said that the Directorate General of Civil Aviation, that is the DGCA, is in close coordination with carriers to ensure safety and compliance amidst airspace closures across parts of Western Asia. After military strikes and retaliatory attacks, passengers are advised to check and confirm flight status with airlines before traveling to airports, and major Indian airports are now on operational alert to handle diversions, manage terminals, assist passengers, and help with crowd control, with senior officials now deployed at passenger assistance control room, actively addressing the concerns. So this is because of the entire airspace in the Middle East now, which is now shut, and with much of the Persian Gulf and West Asia restricted, carriers are diverting north via Afghanistan, Turkmenistan, and Turkey, squeezing global corridors between the Iran crisis and tensions around Ukraine. And Dubai airport has been struck by an Iranian drone, which has caused more disruptions, and at the same time, Abu Dhabi airport is seeing stranded passengers due to operational delays. Bahrain airport has also been hit by an Iranian drone. So Bahrain airport, Dubai airport, remember, one of the busiest airports across the world, has now been hit by a drone. There are reactions coming in. Let's listen in.